Hello everyone, it's Scott, and today we're going to talk about the top 10 mythic rares from Bloomburrow. Over the next couple of days, I'll also be doing a top 10 rares list and a top 10 uncommons list, so be on the lookout for those videos. And also, before we dive into the list, remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on what you thought was your favorite mythic rare from the set. And now let's dive in to my top 10 list of mythic rares that I believe will have the most impact on Standard. So first, coming in at number 10 is Dragonhawk Fate's Tempest for 3 and 2 red mana. You get a legendary creature that's a bird dragon. It's a 5/5 with flying, and whenever Dragonhawk enters or attacks, exile the top X cards of your library, or X is a number of creatures you control with power 4 or greater. You may play those cards until your next end step. At the beginning of your next end step, Dragonhawk deals 2 damage to each opponent for each of those cards that are still exiled. So powerful enter the battlefield trigger with being able to exile cards, and you get 1 for each 4 power or greater creature you have on the field. And I don't think that's going to be a problem in Standard to get there, because we have a lot of 3, 4, 5 mana cost cards that have 4 power or greater already in Standard. And I think it's just putting those cards together into a deck to really take advantage of Dragonhawk's ability. And really, in my mind, I'm not even worried about playing those cards for the most part. I just want that burn damage to go to the opponent's face when I get those activations, and I'm going to be attacking with other creatures. So because of that, I think this has a real chance to see Standard play in a Gruul deck that probably is going to be centered around dinosaurs and other big creatures we've gotten from the last few sets. Coming in at number 9, we've got Glarb Calamity Augur for a black, a green, and a blue mana. You get a legendary creature that's a frog wizard noble and is a 2/4 with death touch. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play land cards and cast spells with mana value 4 or greater from the top of your library, and you can tap Glarb to surveil 2. So this is one of the cards that I'm less certain about from the set. It's got a lot of really good abilities, so I think this is going to be a good card in Commander no matter what. Good card in Limited. But right now in Standard, we don't have a Soul Tie deck. So with that lack of a place to obviously put this, then it's going to have a little bit more problem finding a home in Standard. But I think we could develop a solid Soul Tie deck given what we've got already in Standard. So I think there's a place for Glarb. It's just we've got to get to the deck that Glarb fits well in. And being able to look at the top card of your library and play lands and cast spells from there is a very, very powerful ability. And typically when we've gotten either enchantments or cards like this in the past, they tended to see some serious play in Standard. Next, we've got at number 8, Helga Skittish Seer for a green, white, and blue mana. You elect your creature that's a frog druid and is a 1/3. So Bant colors for Helga. And whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 4 or greater, you draw a card, gain 1 life, and put a +1/+1 counter on Helga Skittish Seer. And you can tap Helga to add X mana of any one color, where X is Helga Skittish Seer's power. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells with mana value 4 or greater, or creature spells with X in their mana cost. So I think if a Bant big creature deck or X creature deck forms, Helga is a logical inclusion in that. We have a lot of actually good mana dorks in Standard right now, and we're going to be getting in Foundations, Lion of War Elf back. So I think being able to play this won't be incredibly difficult given what we're going to be able to access in Standard. I think this fits well into a creature deck where you've got a lot of X creature spells, so X and a color, and then the power and toughness is going to be equal to the +1/+1 counters you're putting on that creature. And because of that, I think Helga, along with having really good 4 mana creatures already in these colors, I think makes Helga potentially very playable in Standard. The question is developing the deck that is going to really take advantage of Helga's ability to, in essence, scale to cast larger and larger creatures throughout the rest of the game. Coming in at number 7, we've got Warden Warleader for 2 and 2 white mana. You get a Rabid Knight with Offspring of 2. You may pay an additional 2 as you cast the spell. If you do, when this creature enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 token copy of it. And Warden Warleader is a 4/4. And whenever you attack, choose 1. Create a 1/1 white rabbit creature token that's tapped and attacking, or attacking creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. So I think we need to look at Warleader in a kind of modal way. So face value 4/4 buffs your team on every attack or creates a creature every attack. And I think that's good enough to see Standard play on its own. But if you can cast this for the 6 mana, then you're going to be able to do that twice. And I think that's going to be a really powerful thing in Standard, because in essence, you can rebuild your board very quickly with a Warden Warleader just by playing this, attacking, creating 1/1s to go wide against your opponent. And I think this will fit into our Rabbit deck very nicely in Standard, but I can even see it in other decks that just want to take advantage of the attack trigger where you can get +1/+1 for all of your creatures. And because of that, I think Warden Warleader is going to be seen in a couple of decks in Standard as kind of the top end of the curve. Coming in at number 6, we've got Kitza Otterball Elite for 1 and a blue mana. You get a legendary creature that's an Otter Wizard. Is a 1/3 with Vigilance and Prowess, and you can draw a card and then discard a card by tapping it, or you can pay 2 and tap it to copy target instant or sorcery spell you control, and you may choose new targets for the copy. Activate only if Kitza's power is 3 or greater. So I think Kitza is going to fit in nicely into the Izzet Prowess deck that we're almost really guaranteed to see in Standard, because we've got so many good Otters with Prowess in the set. We put those together with Slickshot Show Off, Monastery Swiftspear, and all of the good red cards that we've been using to support that deck. And now we can go into blue, get lots of draws and other activations. I don't think we're going to have a problem getting Kitza to that 3 power level in Standard. And because of that, I think this becomes a very playable as at least 2 copies in that deck, and maybe even a 3rd. Coming in at number 5, we have Season of the Burrow for 3 and 2 white mana. You get a sorcery, and you get to choose up to 5 paws worth of modes. You may choose the same mode more than once. For 1 paw, you create a 1/1 white rabbit creature token. For 2 paws, you get to exile target non-land permanent. Its controller draws a card. And for 3 paws, return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield with an indestructible counter on it. So I think Season of Burrow is a sideboard card at the worst in white decks. And if you are playing a go wide strategy, I think the ability to potentially create 5 1/1 white rabbit creature tokens is good enough to see a couple of copies as the top end of a deck in Standard. But if you want to use it for other things like exiling your opponent's best creatures or best permanents that are in play, I think that works as well. And then also, you're early in the game, your opponent kills your best creature for the game. Well, now you can pay 3 paws here and go get that back out of the graveyard with an indestructible counter on it. And I think that combination of abilities and flexibility is something that's going to make this at least a sideboard card in Standard. Next, coming in at number 4 is Ral, Crackling Wit for 2, a blue and a red mana. You get a legendary planeswalker, Ral, with 4 loyalty. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a loyalty counter on Ral, Crackling Wit. And I think that's the key to making Ral playable in Standard is you can very, very quickly, over a couple of turns, get Ral to 10 mana to ultimate him. And because of that, I think that's going to make him playable. But let's see what else Ral does. So for his +1 ability is create a 1/1 blue and red auto creature token with prowess. So solid ability there, can protect Ral. Or you can -3 Ral and draw 3 cards and then discard 2 cards, kind of refilling your hand with that -3 ability. Or for -10, draw 3 cards. You get an emblem with instant and sorcery spells you cast have Storm. And that -10 ability is a bomb ability not only in limited but also in standard. And if you can get that emblem on the field, you're likely to win the game in a turn or two just because of your ability simply to storm everything you're going to be casting. And because of that, I think Ral does have a place in the Izzet deck in standard. Coming in at number 3, we've got Season of Loss for 3 and 2 black mana. You get a sorcery, and you get to choose up to 5 paws worth of modes. You may choose the same mode more than once. For 1 paw, each player sacrifices a creature. For 2 paws, draw a card for each creature you control that died this turn. And for 3 paws, each opponent loses X life, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So the flexibility of this card is really solid because it has kind of a pseudo board wipe in it because you can spend mana to force your opponent to sacrifice creatures. I mean, you're going to be losing one as well, but that's okay because in the end, you're going to be able to hopefully just draw cards equal to the number of creatures that you lost this turn. So, hey, you sacrifice 3 creatures, you do that ability 3 times, and then you do the 2-paw ability and draw 3 cards. And I think that's probably good enough. And then if you've got a lot of creature cards already in your graveyard, you can use the 3-paw ability and drain your opponent of X life. And a lot of times I think that's going to be good enough to win games. So this is at the worst, I think, a sideboard card in black decks, and I think it's main deck playable as well. All right, coming in at number 2, we've got Hugs Grizzly Guardian for X, 2 red mana and 2 green mana. You get a legend creature, that's a Badger Warrior, and is a 5/5 with trample. And when a Hugs Grizzly Guardian enters, exile the top X cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. So Hugs, I think, is potentially broken in Standard, definitely in Limited, a very broken card in Commander. Again, another card that's probably pretty broken there because of that ability to just exile a bunch of cards because you're able to produce so much mana. So if we've got a Gruul deck in Standard that's really playing larger creatures or is using mana dorks and mana acceleration things to ramp up to that 5 or 6 mana relatively quickly in the game, then you play Hugs, you exile a couple of cards, hopefully one of them is a land, you go ahead and play that land. Even if your opponent kills it, that's okay because the next copy you play of Hugs is going to get you even more cards exiled, and it's just going to help to snowball you into a win in that game. And because of that, I think Hugs might be one of the best cards, not only in the Mythic slot, but overall in the set. And coming in at number 1 is Maha, Its Feathers Knight. For 3 and 2 black mana, you legendary creature that's an elemental bird. It's a 6/5 with flying and trample, and it has ward, discard a card. Creatures your opponents control have base toughness of 1. So the reason I think Maha is playable in Standard, because at the worst, you get Maha onto the battlefield, and now all of your opponents' creatures have base toughness of 1, so you can attack with your team. Anything that blocks on the opponent's side is going to die. And if you have an extra mana or 2 lying around when you cast Maha, you can start picking off creatures that your opponent has because of that 1 toughness. We've got a number of spells that give minus, 1 or -2 to everything on the board. You cast one of those things after casting Maha, and now you've killed every creature on your opponent's side with that ability. And I think that is such a powerful ability, because when we don't generally see one-sided board wipes very often, and Maha in the right circumstances can be a one-sided board wipe, and because of that I think it's going to see standard play as the top end of black decks in standard. And I think maybe the best place for this is going to be in a Rakdos deck, because we've got a number of spells in red that do 1 or 2 damage to all of your opponent's creatures, or all creatures in general. And I think those are good enough to really take advantage of Maha's ability and make it the best mythic from the set. All right, those are our top 10 Mythic Rares from Bloomburrow for Standard. And I'll be coming over the next couple days back with the videos that talk about the top 10 rares and the top 10 uncommons from the set. And it would be great if you could remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment, because those things are going to help us do all the YouTube things that we need to get more people access to our content. And I've left links to some of our other videos and the playlist for our Bloomburrow spoilers, so if you'd like to take a look at those, you can access those right there. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks. I will see you next time.